Hi everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to do my lab setup in 2025. I'm going to revamp some of my setup and work on the connection, right, across multiple sites, right, on-prem, hosted, Azure, Oracle Cloud, AWS. So part one of this video, I'm going to show you how I set up my Ubuntu server in the cloud. Okay, so let's hop over to the SSH connection that I've established. So I'm using a hosted server in Contabo, right, as one of my dedicated server in the cloud. It has pretty good memory, CPU, and storage space, right? So it's a good environment for me to set up a virtual environment um, to basically install my systems, desktop, servers, and firewalls and stuff. Now, one of the key things with getting a hosted Linux server in the cloud is that you want to make sure that you set it up properly with some very basic configuration and security in place, right? So when you first get the server, this is what I usually like to do. First thing that I usually do is to change the password on the system, as Contabo sends you the username and the password, which is usually root and a randomly generated password. So the first thing you want to do is to really change the password. You can change the password using the password PSSWD command. Enter the new password, and that should change the password of the root user. Okay. By default, it gives you a random server name. Now, if you have multiple server, always a good practice, whether it's production or test environment, to give your server a useful or meaningful name, right? For YouTube video purposes, I usually set the host name of the server that I'm showing to the website that I have. So the command to change the server is use host name, ctl, set host name, and then followed by the host name you want to give to the server, right? And I usually do my website name. Now, this is a way, one of the many ways that you can do to change host name without having to reboot the system. Even though the host name has been changed, you will see that in the bash session, it's not updated because the host name doesn't get dynamically updated in the bash session. So what you want to do is just execute the bash shell again, and you can see the name of the server is being updated, right? It's a short, it doesn't display the full length because of the prompt. You can change the option of the prompt to display the full name if you want to. Okay, so that's a couple of the basic steps that I do to just set up the initial config. Excuse me. Now, once that is done, right, I'm gonna go to a little bit more administration hygiene. Now, it's always a good practice to have a sudo enable user. Now, to add the user is really straightforward. You just add user followed by the username that you want to give. So in this case, I'm going to use add a user called demo user. I prompts you for a new password, and then you key in the detail of that user that you have just set up, right? So I'm not going to enter the rest of the information. You can always come back and change that later. So once that's done, I would have created a user called demo user, right? You can see what groups it belongs to by using the groups command. And you can see that the demo user belongs to the demo user group by default. Okay, so now next you want to do is to add the user to the sudo world group or the sudo enable group. So I use the command user mode -ag. You can use add user as well, but this is what I prefer to the group, followed by the username demo user. Okay, if there's no error message, that means that it's been added on. You can use the group command to check the demo user group, and you can see that uh, it now belongs to the pseudo groups as well. Okay, so that's how easy to add a pseudo enabled user. We can now then switch user to demo user, and you can see that the user has changed, right? You might want to touch up the bash.rc script or config file to change the default directory when you switch user, because by default, the directory stays with root, right? When you do a switch user from root. Okay, so what you're gonna do is to basically just do cd followed by tilde and slash, right? And that gives you changes you to the actual user group. Why is it useful? Because if I wanted to create a file now, I can just touch a file and it saves it into the current directory, right? If I'm trying to do that in root directory, it won't allow me to create a touch file. Okay, so we've gotten the basic setup done. Next, it's always very important, especially when you are having a server in the cloud, is to make sure that you enable the firewall for the server. By default, I think Ubuntu comes with UFW. I've uninstalled UFW over here, so and I'm going to use a different firewall. Now, the other thing before doing the firewall is to really update the server. Right? It's always good practice to keep the server updated, right? Um, so that you reduce the risk of vulnerable packages, right? So run the command app update. If there's new updates, you will see a list of updates that's available, and after the update, you want to do a upgrade. So those are this is one of the key this first few things that I do as well to keep the server updated and patch properly. Okay, now that once we are done, it's always good for a firewall, right? I've been using IP tables a lot, and I've recently started to do more with NF tables, as net filter, you know, evolves, right? So NF tables is preceding IP tables as a new firewall for Linux server, right? There are a lot of you know, other firewall that you can use, whether it's firewall WD, UFW, even, the open source firewall, right? But NF tables is a good one to start with, right? And you can evolve and add on your own preferred firewall as goes along, right? But NF table is easy to start with. Now, the NF tables config is stored in /etc/NF tables config. So this is a file where the firewall configs are being saved, right? So what I'm going to do is to um, create a fresh file table from scratch. By default, when you install NF tables, there would have been a base configuration that is done. But for this tutorial, I'm going to, flush the configuration. So what we're going to do is do a very basic command, right, to just flush the rule set, right? So I can show you how to create it from fresh, right? So sudo nft flush rule set is a command, and you can also view the rule set by using the nft list rule set, right? So you should see it's blank right now. Now, fundamental of the NF tables are pretty much tables and chain, right? That's how the basic structure of the NF tables rules are being configured and defined. So what we're gonna do is to do the first definition creation of the table by adding the table inet filter, right? So this command will create, a table called inet filter. Actually, in the default Ubuntu installation I have, this is created by default. So once you do that, you can do a NFT list rule set. You will see that a table is being created called inet filter, right? And then what we want to do is to add the first chain. We can use nft sudo nft add to inet filter the chain input, right? We want to add an input chain to the NF table. Okay, oops, syntax error. Okay, add the chain. We're going to add a chain, to the inet filter called input, right? And then we can specify the type. In this case, uh, it's a filter hook for input, and we're going to raise the priority to 0 as the default, and then add the chain, right? So once we do that, we should see a chain being created, right? So now you can see there's a table, there's a chain, and the type is a filter hook for input incoming packet, right? And the default policy is to accept, right? So now, very similar to IP tables, the rules and the policies are evaluated top down, right? It goes through the rule one by one, and it starts with the first rule in the table and chain, right? So a couple of the basic rules that you want to add. I think the ones that I usually add is like the uh, loopback, right? Accepting traffic from loopback. That's usually the first one that I add. Now the next one that is good to add is to keep any established or related packet, right? If there's a two-way communication that's been established, we want to allow it to continue. And then the last one that I, you want to have is basically the rule to allow SSH port, right? So allow SSH connection. So it's a TCP connection coming into destination port 22. If not change the SSH port, and you accept that, right? So you will allow SSH connection to get connected to your Linux server, especially on the cloud, and you're using SSH as a primary connection, then this is a command that you need to have. Right now, if you're using RDP, then you want to allow 3389, etc., and so on and so forth, right? If you're using HTTP or HTTPS, then it's port 80 or 443, right? So you want to make sure that all the allow and accept rules are configured before, right? Dropping or blocking the rest of the traffic. So once we've added the three basic accept rule, the next rule that we want to add is really to drop the rest of the traffic so that you want to prevent unnecessary traffic, uh, you know, connecting to your server, right? So same thing, when I add inet, Oops, sorry. Filter input chain. Oops, something is wrong with my keyboard. And then drop, right? So you drop the rest of the packets that is not required, right? And then now if we do a list, you can see that we have successfully created a table and the input chain. Now we want to do the similar creation for the forward packets and the outgoing or the output packet. So what I do is to do that. Now you can use the history command, right, to copy some of the to create a forward chain, right? Same thing, we want to put the filter, the type as a filter hook, and we want to basically change the type to forwarding packets. Oops. Filter hook, forward priority. iNet filter chain forward. Should be correct. Not sure what's wrong. Okay, syntax error. Uh, Now we need to actually add the chain. Add the chain before iNet. Oops. Okay, and then I'll do the same for the output. Okay, and then now if we look at, okay, if we list the rule again, you can see that we have now created a table with three chain, right? So this is usually the default, except when you look at the policy, I think believe the default policy is to drop packet forwarding, right? So you don't want to allow forwarding across this your server, right? For default setup. Now, if you go into KVM and stuff, yes, you might want to allow forwarding of packets between the virtual network. Okay, but this should get us enough to start with. Now, the key is really to make sure that your incoming traffic that you want uh, to allow, right, configured, and then you want to drop the rest of the packet. Now, make sure you do not drop outgoing packet because that will definitely disconnect any of your session, because if you don't allow outgoing packet, that nothing, uh, you don't allow packet going out, so that will cause a lot of problems, right? So the rule set that you have created is not in the uh, default configuration, right? So for this tutorial, I've actually reset the uh, nftable.conf file. So if we look at the configuration file right now, you will see it's empty, right? So it's blank. Oops, there's a K there. Doesn't matter, right? So what we have configured is active and dynamic in the system, right? So it's not really stored in a file. If you reboot the machine, the configuration disappear, right? So what you want to do is to do a sudo list the rule sets, and then pipe the configuration into the nfl config file. Now, there's a problem with this command when you're even using even when you're using sudo, because the default pipe uses a regular user permission to try and write the file, right? And you will get this error that the permission is denied. So what you want to do is to leverage on sudo t, on the t command, to write the rule sets into the nav table file, right? Oops, sorry. Left out the command T. Okay, so you can see that the rule sets is now being returned to the NF table file, right? So you can go in and take a look, right, by using the text editor to NF table. Right, you can see that now. Oops, nope. Okay, you can see that the rules, the table, and the chain are being added to the NF table. Now you can come here into this file and you know edit the file, right? Right here as well. The only difference is that when you use the nft command, it validates and check the rules. Right now, if you manually change the rule here, um, you will have to restart the IP tables and check whether the syntax you've entered is correct, right? So just as an example, if we edit the file here, for example, and make a simple mistake, right? I can go TCP, deport, and I can accidentally put a D here with 44, except for example, and then when I save, there's no validation. Now, the way to do a quick check, of course, is to just try and restart the NF tables service retrieve from the config file. You will see that there's an error code. You can use the journal to see what is the error. Okay, you need a sudo. Remember to add the sudo in front and tell you what is the error, right? Tells you that the unit failed, and because there's an error in the configuration, because I've added a D here, the syntax is wrong, right? So what you want to do is to then go back to the file and either you change the config, right? Let's set port 80 as an example, and then I save, and then if we do a restart table, then you can see that it is all right, right? So you can double confirm by going to system CTL to and look at the status of your NF tables. I can see this, you know, if it's successful in starting the NF tables and complete that NF table start command. Okay, so that's the way to configure the rules, to make it persistent by making sure that the configuration is updated to the NF tables config file. You can either use the NFT add command or delete command to add rules and delete rules, or you can manually edit the NF tables.config file. Okay, so once it's done, right, by default, right, the ser NF table service is not enable and persistent. So what you do is you do a enable. Let's do one thing first, just to give you an example. You don't really have to disable, but just for this tutorial, I want to disable, right? So by default, it should be disabled. And what you can do now is to just enable the NF table. You will see a symbolic link is being created, right? And if you go look at the status now, you will see that default the service is enabled and loaded, right? Active and exited is normal, right? But this should be, you should see that the service is enabled, which means that when it reboots, the system daemons or the system D service will start the NF tables automatically. Okay, so this gives you the basic protection, right, for your uh, Linux server in the cloud. So with this, it means that only port 22 and port 80 can reach the server. Of course, you still have your authentication that needs to be done before anybody could connect to the server, right? It's basic security, basic setup. It's good for a start, but you might want to put in a few more rules to further harden and protect your machine. Okay, and so once that is done, another utility that I like is, remote access capability. From a UI perspective, you can use XRDP or VNC, right? So I use both of them quite extensively. The key difference is XRDP default uses 3389. If you want to tweak XRDP, it's a little bit more technical than VNC, whereas VNC is a lot easier when it comes to tweaking, um, but a few more steps, right? So it all depends on, what you like. Uh, XRDP also allows you to use the native Windows Remote Desktop client or any, RDP software that you use, right? So uh, it all depends what you are familiar with. In this tutorial, I'll show you XRDP. But before uh, turning on remote desktop management for the UI, you need to make sure that you have a desktop or service or desktop agents software enabled, right? So you can use Genome, Light DM. There are a few of them out there. There's actually a lot of the lightweight desktop or full blown desktop out there. So I like XFCE a lot because it's very lightweight and I've been using it for a while, right? So the command to install XFCE is actually quite straightforward. You want to just do sudo apt install XFCE4, and then there are a couple of utils that you can also install it, right? So you can just specify all the necessary or the util that you use. These are the ones that I use a lot, and then you can just install them. So I've installed it so you don't see the modules being installed, but this is the command to install the lightweight desktop. Now once that's installed, what we're gonna do is also next we want to install the XRDP or VNC. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to install. We're going to use XRDP. So this is a command to install RDP. Once it's done, just enable it. So same thing, you can. I've already enabled it, so you should not see the symbolic link. But if you are doing it for the first time, you will see the symbolic link, right? Okay, so interestingly, it does the synchronization of XRDP service and enable XRDP, right? So pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Now, if I look at the service that I'm listening on, I can do the SS, which is uh, the next upgrade of Nextstep, right? Oops. Okay, you can use SS as our Nextstep. By default, it's not installed with the system anymore. And you can see what is listening in the port, right? And you can see right now we have 3389 listening, right? So that's our XRDP. Okay. So I say the best part of XRDP is I can just use a Microsoft Remote Desktop client. Any software can do. I've created the server and then I'm trying to connect, right? So if you remember the firewall policies, I have not enabled or allow connection from 3389. You will see the following error, right? Okay, so it won't allow you to connect. So if we go back to the NF tables, you can use the append command uh, to add the rule. So we can sudo nft append uh, to inet filter in input chain. And then TCP destination port 3389 accept. Okay, syntax error. Okay, syntax again, nft append rule. Okay, let's forgotten the rules. Inet filter the table. uh, into input chain, and then we want to add it into position 3, I believe, and then TCP port, destination port 3389, and then we want to accept that incoming connection. Did I? Okay. Oops. We want to use append will append to the end of that chain. We want to actually insert uh, position 3. Okay, I think in the test just now, the NF table might not have loaded because of the error that we did. Let's just check and see whether there's any rule set configured. Okay, there's actually a rule. The rule set is there, right? So sudo nft insert rules inet filter table chain input. That should be correct. Filter input position 3. Interesting. It doesn't allow me to insert into position 3. Let's see whether I can insert into position 2 instead. Nope. Interesting. So I definitely have enough rules into the position 3. Okay, the way the insert rules and the position is relatively different from IP table. So let's use the following command to check the position. So as you can tell, I'm still trying to get used to the new syntax of the NF table. So one of the ways to check the position or the handle, we can use the list minus minus handle option to list the chain in inet filter table under input, right? So this, you can see there is a remark on the handle, right? So it can tell you the position of the handle. This is handle 1. Uh, this is handle 4, handle 5, handle 6, handle 7, and handle 8. So you want to insert the rules after TCP AD accept, right? So let's do this sudo nft insert rules to position 6 in this case, or 7, and then whoops, no, rule to inet filter input position 6, and then TCP port 3389 accept. Okay, Now we've successfully insert. Let's just check the command. Okay, and you can see it's inserted this above handle 6, right? So it's pretty interesting. I think the handle numbers goes by the sequence of when it is when the rules is created. It's, it's pretty different from IP tables, whereby it's a lot more straightforward. Okay, and the good news is that, well, the good and bad news is that now I can also use, let's remove the NFT command to delete by handle number, right? So delete the rules from inet filter in the input chain, handle 7, right? Then if we do a list, we can see that handle 7 is now deleted. Okay, something interesting. Well, yeah, usually I go in and edit the file, as you can tell, but just trying out the NFT commands, as we do the tutorial. Okay, so now that we have added 3389, we should be able to do the RDP session. So like I said, the XRDP, the good is that you don't have to have a separate client, right? Unlike VNC, you will need a VNC client, right? So XRDP, I can just use the usual XRDP client. Okay, and then I should be able to connect, right? Okay, I need to not scale so much. So you can see we are now connected to the Linux server using RDP. Okay, so remember, you can create a script for this to basically update the rule and then use the t command to /etc/nftables. Okay, and we've now updated the rules to the nf table. Okay, so that's pretty much some of the basic commands. I'm also still figuring out the syntax as well, but you can always edit the file, right? So with this, we have done the basic configuration, change the password, set up the firewall, and then install the lightweight desktop FCE, and then XRDP agents, open up additional port for 3389. So we're good to go to basically allow remote access and administration of the Linux server. Okay, so next what we're going to do is to install the KVM, right? For this Linux machine. Now you can it's good to check whether virtualization is supported. So you can see when you do KVM OK, KVM if the hardware allows you to do virtualization, you can see that KVM acceleration can be used. You will need the bridge util or the QEMU KVM uh, software and utilities to be installed to be able to do KVM OK command. Okay, now once you identify that you can do the or the hardware support KVM, you can install the following utilities: QEMU, the virtual manager, which allows you to launch the UI manager for your virtualization environment, the daemon system, the command line, the client, and the bridge utilities, right? So I'm going to do that. Okay, I've installed that previously, so we are good to go. Now, another important thing, if you're going to use the sudo user, you need to make sure that the user is in the following groups, right? So we're going to add that user to the group. So we're going to add demo user to the KVM group. Make sure you have sudo available at user, and then the library virtual group. There is a couple of, I believe it's QEMU if I'm not wrong. Okay, and then let's check. Just make sure that your user is added to the, because I'll be using this user to, so we're going to check the list file for the groups and user. So this command, I'm going to see what are users and group in the password file, right? So I'm grabbing all the libraries so I can see QEMU, and then I want to add the user to the following group as well. Okay, so let's do that. DNSMASQ. Okay, so once that's done, let's just do a quick verification of the demo user. Okay, we have all the necessary group done. Okay, so you might not need to do this, but I usually like to restart the library virtual daemon. Okay, just to ensure that the permission has been assigned properly. Now, if we go back to the RDP session, oops, okay, when I'm in there, let's do a virtual manager. Okay, yep, this is usually the permission problem, so it's quite easy to fix. We just have to close this session and relaunch the session, right? So because I believe that session doesn't allow, was connected before the our config on adding the user. You will see some of these errors, right, which is a couple of tweaks you can do in the system, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to relaunch it, and then I should be able to, so it doesn't, okay, so I have to, okay, let's do this, log out of the system, okay, and then log back in. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I can see that I am now connected to the uh, virtual machine, right? So I have a client already running. I'm planning to add all my test machines here. Uh, we'll see that in the future tutorial. Okay, now one thing to take note is that by default the net plan is doesn't allow, or it's not I mean the configuration is not configured for breach mode, right? So if you go to connection details, you can see that by default the breach is set to net mode, right? So uh, in my lab environment, I actually have additional public IP address to assign to the firewalls that I'm going to spin off, right? And that's why a bridge mode is important. So I'm going to show you how to configure the bridge quickly. Let's close all these things first and then come back in. Okay, so Ubuntu uses 22 version 22.04. I can't remember, was it version 18 and above? They use NetPlan, right? So the configuration for NetPlan is stored inside this NetPlan, and then you can see that there is the default configuration should be 01-netconfig .yaml. You have not changed anything, there's a backup to it, right? So if you have not changed this, this is the file that you need to edit, right? So by default, you will realize that it's not in breach mode. I've done the configuration as you can see here, so um, I'll show you what are the changes that you need to do. So one of the what we're going to do is just to go in using uh, privilege admin, net plan, oops, followed by the uh, okay. So what you want to change here from a basic default configuration is that the ISP or the service provider by default configures the interface, or during the default installation it will allow, it has configured a matching MAC address. Now I've set the name to ether0, but default it should be there. Now what you want to do is to set the default configuration to, no DHCP, because I'm going to assign the public IP address. Now what you need to add is the bridge interface, right? This is a name that you can give to the bridge interface that you want. So when you do an IP address later, you'll see the bridge interface. Now the interface is tied to the physical interface ENS18 in this case. The address is the public IP address that the ISP or the service provider has provided. Uh, because I am using static IP addresses, so I will define the static IP addresses here. Now, if you're using DHCP, which is really is pretty unlikely for dedicated server, you can use DHCP to yes, right? And then there's a default route that is being configured. Name server, you can specify accordingly. So the two things that you probably add in is the bridge and the demo bridge. Uh, syntax here, so that you can tie the interface to the bridge, to the demo bridge, and that's what we're going to do. Okay, so once you do that, you can actually use netplan sudo netplan generate, right, to generate a plan. uh, okay, my current YAML file is to open. um, as you can see, let's see, I have not really looked at it recently in this new server. All right, you can see that it allows read write to root. I'm not sure why is it to open, but you know figure out later, right? So sorry for a little bit of digress. So we want to go back and do a sudo netplan generate. It will generate the config. Okay, I don't know why It gives you that error because I'm using sudo. Uh, might be a good practice to configure in root, I don't know. Okay, so once you generate a net plan, you want to basically test it out, right? Do a try, right? It's important because this uh, allows you to test out. Now, if you suddenly loses connection, what this command does is that, after 120 seconds, if you have not done any, you know, uh, if you are disconnected, it will revert and it gives you the ability to connect back, right? So in this case, I'm going to enter, configuration is accepted, right? And then what you want to do is after you try is basically it should be applied, right? But you can also use the net plan apply to just apply. Okay. Okay, we don't have vSwitch, so you can ignore all the warning. All right, so that's all you need to do to create a bridge. Now if I do an IP address now, you can see a demo bridge is being connected and the IP address is there. So once you have done it, right, the next step you want to do is to create a uh, bridge template, right, to configure the virtual network in the KVM. Okay, so what you want to do is to do this, we can just create a temporary uh, file in the temp folder. Just be mindful if you reboot your machine or depending on what you set up for the files to be deleted in the temp file, this file might go away after after a while, right? So but because we don't really need this file for long, so we're going to do it. So we're going to do a demo bridge 2 since I already have one created XML file, right? Okay, now what we're going to do is to add the following command. Okay, we're going to define, and this is for use in the KVM or the virtual manager. We're going to define a new network name called demo bridge 2 with the mode bridge and then a name of demo bridge 2. Okay, let's do that. Oops, save the configuration and then issue the following command, right? The fish command, net define. Oops, forgot the net define followed by this file. Okay, once you define, then you want to basically start the network. Uh, demo bridge. Oops, sorry. Net auto start. Okay, demo bridge 2. And then you can also start. Okay, so the auto start allows you to automatically start every time you reboot or when you restart the KVM services. Okay, so once that's done, you can also use vish command to just list all the oops okay uh, default is all. You can see that we have now created a breach, right? Now if I do a IP link show, you can see that demo breach is there, virtual breach 0, virtual breach 1. Okay, interesting. Okay, I don't know why it's not showing, but let's just connect to the XRDP and see what is the problem. Okay, breach 02 is active. Seems that the override is not helping. I should have seen a demo breach 2 created. I'm surprised that it's not there. Oh, demo breach 01 is there, but I don't see demo breach 02. Interesting. Right. Okay. So figure out, is it because because I did not create a NAP plan for demo breach 02, right? So therefore it's not applying, right? So let's just do this for the fun of it. NAP plan as okay, we can just for demo purposes, I'm going to create demo breach 02, and then just have the interfaces tied to S18, and then we're gonna do the SCP version 4, yes. Okay, and let's do the net plan. Okay, the inconsistent indentation. Here I'm gonna do copy and paste, right? So okay, that's why it should be like okay. That's a good thing to generate. They'll give you the error. It's already assigned, so I can't assign to the same interface. Okay, let's just take out this. Okay, so there's no interface tied to it, but just to create one, for example, you usually don't do that, but I'm gonna do that, and then let's apply this. I should see IP address. I should see my bridge 0 demo bridge 02 right now created, right? Okay, so this is not you know the usual break you do it, but just as an example, since I already have demo bridge 01 configured, I have created the demo bridge 02 just to show you how to create a bridge, right? So if you have dual homing network port, you can actually create a bridge for the second network port. There are ways to assign multiple IP addresses to uh, the same interface. There's a way to bridge or create net plan that allows you to link multiple bridge to a same interface. But we'll not cover it here. But this is the basics, right? To create a virtual, define a net plan, right? Bridge, right? So that you can bridge the KVM virtual network to the public internet or the external connection, right? In the next tutorial, I'll show you a little bit more, maybe do a little bit better at configuring a proper net plan, right? And show you the use case for this. Okay, so thank you for watching. Hope the tutorial is useful, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.